I, as an old leftist, who found it very strange to be in the same kind of movement with radical Islamists. So in a sense, it seems to be more about an opportunity to let off steam about all this frustration with the world around us. And it's not necessarily about a specific political aim that we want to take out of it. Maybe it's a nice day out, hundreds of thousands of people, and it's an opportunity for us to register that we're feeling frustrated. And in a sense, it becomes like a tantrum. But it's based on the lowest common denominator. And in a sense, Israel has come to represent what we always urged in the Arab left, and this is kind of my own personal history, is Israel was very successful as a country in terms of industry, in terms of agriculture, in terms of all of these things. And there's a lesson to be learned there. There's a lesson in how development can actually increase the capacity of a specific geographic area of land to accommodate its people and give them a decent life standard. Regardless of our objections towards its foundations, it was very successful. In that sense, it represented a kind of an achievement in modern terms. And in a sense, today, the people who are criticizing it, they are criticizing also that very modern aspect of it. And it's not by accident that a lot of, within Israel itself, a lot of the opposition to the, if you like, the political status quo comes from very environmental kind of background. And there's even the whole notion that the more important aspect now, and this is seriously being developed, of the conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis is a resource issue. It's not actually about competing political projects, all of which is completely irrelevant. But what it tells is that this notion that there's so much about our apathy towards modernity, our lack of appetite to say that the world around us is not for us to sit back and wait for things to happen. The world is opportunities. It's about development. It's about progress. And that's how, in a sense, the Palestinians are becoming the darlings of the international left, or, if you like, liberals in general, because they're often portrayed as vernacular, kind of living in vernacular settings, happy just planting, feeding their goats and planting their fields and living this pre-modern ideal kind of existence, and which suddenly gets invaded by a modern European invader. And that's completely inaccurate. The Palestinian liberation movement was all about how can we develop, if you like, the Palestinian state, which will come into being and make it a more rewarding place to, and how to be more progressive. So in a sense, this, if you like, a return to the ideals, the modern ideals that informed that Palestinian political struggle for so long, is one way from the Palestinian point of view of overcoming the obstacles of how they are being portrayed today. But at the same time, we need to do, I think, from our point of view here, more work to inform those protesters, and maybe to make use of that energy, that sense of frustration, to say there are much more intelligent ways of directing that and putting it to use than going and smashing up a Starbucks. I don't find that necessarily healthy or useful to anyone. And for example, I know from the country that I come from, in Lebanon, that Starbucks employs hundreds of people over there. And it's actually a local franchise is operated by local investors. So actually, when these places are attacked or smashed up, it's always the local partners that get hurt, and it's never the franchise owners. So there's some work to be done towards dispelling these myths. I particularly don't like Starbucks, but not because of their politics, because their coffee is rubbish. But there's something different. But I wouldn't go and smash it up. And then the other point that I want to make is that energy, the fact that you would get off your ass on a Sunday or Saturday and go to a demonstration, is not to be dismissed, because these are not the majority, they are the minority. There's a lot of work to be done by saying a sense of solidarity is healthy, but how about looking at it? What is more politically effective? And how do you reflect on that with regard to your life? Don't look at the Palestinians as if they are these pre-modern kind of alien creatures to you. They are human beings like you and I who want to have a better future for themselves, and they have every right to. Then you can ask yourself questions about how you can fit into that, or actually if you have any role whatsoever. But I wouldn't be at all dismissive of, if you like, the instinct to want to do something. That's a very noble thing. It's just a question for us. How do we do that?
Yes, I was wondering if you had any, proposals for that, because, like you said, the overall sense of feeling is everyone's very frustrated right now. The West, Israel, Palestine, and you said that there's much more intelligent things to do than be smashing up Starbucks. But what exactly are these opportunities? It seems right now the two choices we have, neither are very appealing, are you intervene and everyone's screwed, or you don't intervene and everyone's screwed too.
How do you channel the energy to do something with what's out there?
And what do they want to do? We're all sort of imposing our ideas of what we think is best for the region, but I know that also Lebanon and Israel's history is a very tense one as well. And from, perhaps this is a bit, simplistic, I know that we'd all like to see peace, but is it really possible for them all to, live together, considering the history behind them, considering the religious conflicts, the cultural conflicts? From what I understand, is it possible for Arabs and Jews to live together?
There's a lot of Jewish people that live in the Middle East, and they live with Arabs. Their neighbors are Arabs, and that was the case. And the only picture that we're seeing is the thing that's happening in Palestine and in Israel at the moment, and that is the only picture that we get when we think of Arabs and Jewish.
In the 90s, that inspired the whole this Western peace process. That didn't work. Basically, it was that Westerners didn't believe that Arabs and Jews could live together, so we just cut down right down the middle, segregated them, and they couldn't mix. And that's what's led to how it is now.
But do they want that? Is that what they want?
Well, separation obviously hasn't worked, and what separation is integration.
It's true what Hamza's saying. They've been living together for centuries, all over the Middle East. Even in Egypt, there's a big diversity between Christian and a Jewish and a Muslim population. Even Arabs themselves, it's not as simple just to say Jews and Arabs, because even Arabs themselves is a racial identity, it's not a belief system. So even Arabs can be Jewish or Christian or as such, so...
As can Westerners.
As can be Semites, so even Arabs are Semites, so to even raise the argument of anti-Semitism is a bit redundant in a way, so...
I think it's almost giving up to say that, because, well, I don't know, kind of treating them as sort of a special case. Arabs and Jews can never possibly get along. There's cases around the world where people have been in conflict for centuries, like in Europe. England and France have a long history of wars. If we got over that, you don't hate French people. I hope you don't anyway. It just seems really stupid to me to suggest that this is a special case and they could never possibly ever get along, and therefore we have to segregate them. People do get over acrimonious history. It's just that the current policies seem to want to fix that history in place.
I just really want to interrupt at this point because of we keep going back to this. They're identified as pre-modern. They're identified as modern. The fact that it is different to all of that now because it is not modern. It is not pre-modern. It is post-modern. We are living in an age when even Westerners are Arabs. They are Jews. We are not talking about people who are detached from an issue or who can intervene or take a back seat. These are people who are genuinely connected to the issues, who may know people who are out there, who may have friends and family out there. We live in a global society, and I think that a more positive way to discuss things, instead of these sweeping solutions or this blame game, which is even being played with the West here, blaming the West for everything, is completely unproductive when there really is so much positive energy going towards it. People are genuinely frustrated by these issues and genuinely want to feed into it. And a perfect example of why this makes it very difficult to solve is terrorism. We've ignored terrorism for almost this entire discussion, which is very strange, and we've talked about consumerism, which is almost the flip side. It's an individual who takes a strong interest in a situation and acts, and terrorism is just a channeling of that, but it's a channeling of that is unproductive to a modern political system. So how do we channel it in a way that combats or is at least more productive than terrorism?